So the other day on the Big Ten Live show, I was slated to go on at 8 p.m. Because normally I do the 8 p.m. block called the Ocho, and I was actually going to bring on a guest. I don't know if you know Go Blue Lexi. I was going to bring her on. So now she's going to be on. Yeah, she's awesome. She's going to be on next week now because we kind of had extreme breaking news, and Mark stayed on the show because he was supposed to leave. He stayed on the show to cover the breaking news that Pat Fitzgerald is no longer the head coach of Northwestern. And so names all over have been thrown around. Mark says he's up to 29 names. And we've heard of people like former Stanford head coaches and Al Gold and some of these guys, and Sherrone Moore is a name that has been thrown out there in some of the media that I've seen, and he's been kind of building up to head coach status. Maybe even could have been a head coach this year, but decided to come back to try to help Michigan win a national championship. So what's your take on Sherrone Moore maybe taking that step after this year? I'm hoping they do a search first, let Michigan go through to the postseason, and then they make an announcement. But what's your take on Sherrone Moore as a candidate?
Yeah, well, Sherrone Moore was almost the head coach at Michigan last year if Harbaugh would have come to terms with the Vikings, and I don't know how close you thought he was to doing it. He was pretty close, and Moore was going to be the guy for Michigan. And as you know, Harbaugh has not signed that new contract, so he has a low buyout. So we could be going through that dance again. So Sherrone Moore is going to want to take a look. I think he would rather have the Michigan job. No offense to Northwestern, but yeah, I think if I was putting together a list, if Sherrone Moore would be on it, I don't think he would be in the top 5. Number 1 with a bullet, and the obvious is going with the former Northwestern Wildcat quarterback, Mike Kafka, who worked with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. He went to Buffalo with Dable and worked with Josh Allen. He worked with Danny Dimes this year. And now, Danny Dimes is like everybody's talking about. He's been reinvented and look at him. So if you could get Kafka, if you're Northwestern, that would be about as that's a grand slam for them. That would be, say, next Pat Fitzgerald, but he'd be like their Jim Harbaugh, especially since he was a quarterback. So he would be number 1. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest and Matt Campbell at Iowa State. If Harbaugh, it could have happened after the pandemic season. If Michigan would have gone elsewhere, I think they would have gone with Matt Campbell. If Iowa State has a good year, if Wake Forest has a good year, I would put both of Clawson and Campbell up there. But thinking about how this is going to play out, this is only, I don't know, hours old, weeks, not weeks, days old. You start thinking about the lawsuits that are going to, be coming Northwestern's way, and what's going to happen in Evanston with the civil lawsuits. If I had to bet on it, I think Braun, their defensive coordinator that came over from North Dakota State, Dave Braun, who was their DC, who's now going to be the acting head coach. We'll see how he handles everything, but I think you don't count against, don't count him out, but those would be some of the ones. But then, Sherrone Moore, since the first time I've ever seen him walk up to the podium, some people have it. I wish I had it, where you just captivate the room. He's got charisma. It's not like, he is a good communicator and a good speaker, but I don't know. There's some people that have that special quality, and he has it. And the first time I saw him, I said, that guy's going to be a head coach. I didn't even know what kind of coach he was going to be, but just based on how he communicated and just how he directed the room, he's got that CEO style up there. So, they could do a lot worse than Sherrone Moore. Northwestern, in some regards, seems like it'd be the greatest job in the world. Where it's located, outside of Chicago, you don't have great expectations. You just, once in a while, you get to 500 and, they'll throw you a party, get ready to build you a statue. But I don't know, with what's going on, recruiting's already difficult because of the academics. And now this situation, and then to add on They're not going to be in the Big Ten West anymore. They're going to combine, I think. I know that's not official, but I think everybody thinks that's going to happen. So suddenly they're going to have to play everyone. You're going to be in the basement. Maybe you can't turn down a 7-8 year deal of $30 or $40 million or more, but it kind of feels like, you take that job, you're probably not going anywhere else unless you pull off a Fitzgerald, which is very difficult to do, as we saw.
And some folks are pointing to this gentleman, Brian Hartline.
Good.
And I think it's primarily Michigan fans doing this, but so I did read a few non-Michigan fans saying it because of the recruiting ability that he has. I think it's a long shot, folks, but never stop dreaming.
He is the best recruiter. Like, I don't know. I was going to say best recruiter. He's a great recruiter. So why would it be a long shot unless Day loses to Michigan and they start calling him John Cooper, then Hartline would be like Sherrone Moore in line to be the Ohio State coach. But if Day's going to stay around and they feel like, he really is the answer, there's only so many jobs, and Hartline, I could see him, he should be on some kind of list as well, just because of that recruiting.
Yeah. I mean, he is a great recruiter. I think at the number one, I don't think he wants the job. I think he wants the Ohio State job, right? And so I don't see Ryan Day sticking it out for 10 or 20 years when every year the fan base is like sending Venmo like hate to the players, and people are like, one loss. The guy has had 2 Big Ten losses his entire career. I'm defending Ryan Day right now. He's had 2 Big Ten losses. And yet when I was on the Buckeye podcast and stuff right after because of course I had to soak that in right after the Michigan win in 2022, the amount of calls for Ryan Day's job for 1 loss, 2 total. I know they're to Michigan, but how can you possibly fire somebody when he's had 2 Big Ten losses his entire career? It kind of boggles my mind. So that's a consideration.
The thing is, you just have to go back and look at history. John Cooper was the greatest recruiter, and he had great teams at Ohio. Not good teams. He had great teams. But of course, he couldn't beat Michigan. And with Day, he comes in and it's a really good spot and he does well. And like the transition is seamless. He looks awesome. He's even bringing pro concepts in there. But yeah, losing to Michigan, and it's not just losing to Michigan. You get tripped up, Sean Spring slips, and somebody goes 80 yards and you lose a game there. You shank a field goal like they did this year. You get that. But Michigan, they only scored 3 points in the second half at home. I mean, that was a disaster. And they got manhandled. Michigan balled up their fist and punched him in the mouth. And it was 2 years in a row. And after 21, Day stood up there and told everybody, we're going to get tough. They brought Jim Knowles in, defensive coordinator. Physicality is the name of the game and all that. And then they got roundhoused again. So it's not just losing, it's getting dominated the way they did. And so, but I don't think, it is knee jerk. I know I'm acting like I'm, sending him out the door. It's knee jerk after 2 years, but 3 years. And if he goes up to Ann Arbor this year and they get manhandled again and Michigan's running up and down the field, then Ohio State fans know how this series has worked. Ohio State wins, 10 out of 12. Michigan wins, 10 out of 11. And then it would really feel like it's flipped around. I know how it feel like it's flipped around if Michigan goes for some three-peat. It would feel like that. I think you'd pull out a lot of people in Ann Arbor saying, hey, yeah, keep Day around. It's only been 3 years. Let's go. Yeah,
right. Then you start having the same thing that they were saying about Harbaugh, like get him a lifetime contract and stuff back in like 2020. The same type of reactions the other way around. But, I think I threw this out. I forget which show. I think it was the Buckeye Mike show. Because I'm doing that with him to do like a Michigan versus Ohio State every week. I'm going to be doing that with him. And one of the things I kind of threw out there is that if Ohio State loses to Notre Dame with McCord, then that could be a real problem for Michigan, because then the chance of a benching for Devin Brown is real. If they get destroyed, or even if they lose by a couple of touchdowns to Notre Dame, maybe McCord throws some picks, and Devin Brown comes in as the starting quarterback for the Michigan game, who I think is more of a dual threat. I think he is harder to defend against based on what I've seen from both players. Then the route to beating Michigan could be losing to Notre Dame. So I don't really even know who to root against in that game, because either way, you know.
Well, the thing, if I'm an Ohio State fan, yeah, you're looking at that game, and you're going to be upset if you lose. I just look, they do so well in recruiting. Like,
Right.
you would think that they should be. It gets back to the Ryan Day. You would think that they would be right there every year, and just in the talent that they have at quarterback, at wide receiver, we already talked about that. But then you watch the defense play, and I watch them against Penn State, and some of the one guy, JTT, that was one of the greatest games I've ever seen by a defender. I didn't see him at all against Michigan. Safety,
Right.
this guy's 5-star safety, number 12. I mean, he's shying away. JJ McCarthy gets to the goal line. You're supposed to be popping him and sending him, into downtown Columbus. Instead, the guy rose up his hands.
Right.
He thought they were playing against USC. But I don't even think the defense this year is the biggest question mark. That offensive line, they lost some, and I know they got some guys in here, but I question Ohio State on both sides of the line and just how tough they are. They've got talent.
Yeah.
They've got more talent than anybody in the country. Maybe Alabama or Clemson wants to stand up and say, our talent's better. All right. They've got great talent, and they keep getting in. That's why FPI and everybody loves them, because they keep ringing the bell on all these formulas, because they're always number 1, number 2, number 3 in recruiting. But the coaching isn't where it needs to be down in Columbus with the kind of talent that they're getting. And Michigan's exposed it the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Their talent, they that's why, even though they're ahead in the recruiting battle currently, I'm not sweating it much, because it hasn't mattered head to head on the field. They've had 5 stars every year.